I arrived at the wedding dressed in a well-tailored suit, not overly extravagant, but sharp enough to command respect. Or so I thought. The moment I stepped inside, the air shifted. Conversations halted for a brief second, replaced by the unmistakable whispers of judgment. My wife's family had always treated me like an outsider, but today, they weren't even trying to hide it. The venue was grand. White silk drapes cascading from the ceiling, chandeliers glistening like stars, and floral arrangements so excessive they looked like a royal garden had exploded in the middle of the hall. Every detail screamed luxury. Every glance in my direction screamed something else, unwelcome. As I made my way toward my wife, her mother, the infamous mother-in-law from hell, intercepted me. She wasn't just the matriarch of the family. She was the self-proclaimed gatekeeper of status and proper image. And apparently, I didn't fit into the picture. Her face contorted into an exaggerated expression of concern, though I knew better. "Oh dear, you made it," she said, her voice dripping with insincerity. I forced a polite smile. Of course, wouldn't miss it for the world. She looked me up and down, as if scanning for flaws. Then, with the same condescending tone, she gestured toward the very back row of seats, the kind meant for plus ones that nobody cared about or distant cousins who weren't actually invited but showed up anyway. "Why don't you sit over there? We don't want to ruin the wedding photos." I blinked. The words stung, but not because they were unexpected, because they were so blatantly cruel, so deliberately humiliating. I turned to my wife, half expecting her to defend me. Instead, she let out a soft chuckle, shaking her head like I was some harmless fool. "Mom," she said lightly, "be nice." But it wasn't a defense. It was a dismissal. A pat on the head like I should just accept my place. I should have been used to this by now. My in-laws never hid their distaste for me. I wasn't born into money, didn't have a last name that meant something, didn't spend my life vacationing in countries most people couldn't afford to pronounce. I worked my way up, built something from the ground, not from inheritance. But to them, that wasn't enough. I swallowed my pride and walked to the back, sat where they wanted me to, watched as the real family took center stage. The guests were already posing for pictures, photographers snapping away as my brother-in-law and his bride basked in the limelight. Laughter, champagne toasts, the clinking of expensive silverware. All of it blurred in the background as I stared at my wife. She had once claimed to love me for my ambition, my determination. She used to say that money didn't matter, that we were partners in every way. But as time passed, I saw the shift, the way she enjoyed the comfort of being the one who married down, the way she let her family treat me like a burden instead of her husband. And today, she didn't just let it happen. She laughed. Something inside me clicked into place. I wasn't just going to sit there and let them pretend I was nothing. I reached into my pocket, feeling the smooth surface of my phone. Then, without a word, I stood up and walked outside. They didn't notice. Not yet. But they would. They would never forget this day. I stepped out of the wedding hall and into the cool evening air, letting the tension roll off my shoulders. The laughter, the smug grins, the dismissive glances, they all melted away as I took a deep breath. I wasn't angry. I was focused. It wasn't the first time my wife's family had disrespected me. But today, they had done it in public, in front of hundreds of guests, cameras, and people who would remember every detail. They had humiliated me, thinking I'd sit there, accept it, swallow the insult like I had before. That was their first mistake. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a contact saved under a single word, execute. A voice picked up immediately. "Is it time?" A smirk formed on my lips. "It's time," I said. The voice chuckled, the kind of laugh that comes from a man who enjoys his work. "Understood. Give me 10 minutes. I ended the call without another word. No explanations were needed. We had prepared for this moment months ago. See, my wife and her family had always assumed I was struggling. They saw my simple, strategic lifestyle and mistook it for lack of wealth. They never asked what I did, where my investments lay, how deep my connections ran. And that was their second mistake. Because while they spent their lives flaunting their old money prestige, I had built something far greater, influence. and in 10 minutes, that influence was about to wreck their perfect little event. I took my time strolling back inside, my pace calm, unhurried. My seat at the back was still waiting for me, the symbolic reminder of where they thought I belonged. I sat, fingers lightly tapping on the armrest, watching the wedding unfold. The groom, my wife's brother, was beaming as he twirled his bride on the dance floor. The band played an elegant melody, the guests sipped their drinks, and the photographers moved seamlessly, capturing every perfect angle. In their minds, this was a flawless wedding. They had no idea what was coming. I glanced at my wife. She was deep in conversation with her sister and a few high society wives, laughing as she sipped from her champagne glass. She had been so comfortable in my silence. She thought I was harmless. That was her third mistake. As the 10-minute mark approached, I leaned back, adjusting my cufflinks, my pulse steady. Then, like clockwork, the first sign appeared. It was subtle at first. The head chef, a middle-aged man in a pristine white uniform, walked over to one of the waiters, whispered something, and casually removed his apron. Then he walked out. A second waiter followed. Then another. And another. The guests hadn't noticed yet. The wedding continued. Glasses clinked, conversations flowed, and the music carried on. But behind the scenes, the staff was vanishing. One by one, the bartenders, servers, decorators, and kitchen staff quietly packed up and left, slipping through the back exit like ghosts in the night. The event, the one my wife's family had spent over a year planning, was unraveling right before their eyes. And no one had a clue. Not yet. But they would. Because I was done being their poor one. I checked my watch. 5 minutes left before the real storm hit. I smirked, swirling the untouched drink in my glass. Enjoy this moment while you can, dear in-laws. You won't like what happens next. I leaned back in my chair, watching the carefully curated event start to unravel at the edges. The room was still lively, filled with the hum of laughter, the occasional burst of applause, and the clinking of expensive champagne glasses. To the untrained eye, everything looked perfect. But to me, I saw the cracks forming beneath the surface. The first sign came in the form of a missing tray of appetizers. At first, no one noticed. The servers had been moving seamlessly through the crowd just moments ago, expertly balancing silver platters stacked with delicate hors d'oeuvres. But now, guests were glancing around, confused, their hands empty. A woman in a form-fitting navy blue dress, one of my mother-in-law's socialite friends, snapped her fingers at a nearby waiter. "Excuse me? We haven't been served in a while." The waiter, a young man with a stiff posture and a darting gaze, didn't respond. Instead, he set his tray down on an empty table, removed his serving towel, and walked straight out of the venue. Gone. The woman frowned, muttering under her breath, but she was too self-absorbed to dwell on it. She turned back to her group, laughing as if nothing had happened. But that was just the beginning. At the bar, a wealthy-looking man in a tailored tuxedo strolled up confidently, nodding toward the bartender. "Another whiskey for me and my friends," he ordered, tapping his glass against the counter. But the bartender, who had been moving swiftly just minutes ago, was completely still. His face was blank, his fingers curled tightly around the edge of the counter. Then, without a word, he untied his apron, tossed it onto the counter, and walked away. The guest waiting for his drink blinked in shock. "What the hell? Where are you going?" No response. The bartender didn't even glance back. The man scoffed, turning toward his friends. "We paid for an open bar, and they're just leaving?" A few other guests started to notice the oddity. The flow of drinks was slowing down, the usual endless pouring of wine and liquor interrupted by long, uncomfortable pauses. But still, the party continued. A table of well-dressed socialites waved down a passing waiter. "Could we get another bottle of champagne?" one of the women asked, tilting her empty flute. The waiter nodded and walked toward the back. They waited and waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The waiter never returned. "Where is he?" one of the women muttered, twisting in her chair. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Guests were looking around, noticing that no one was coming to clear their plates. The staff that had once moved in a perfectly synchronized rhythm was thinning out. One by one, the waiters disappeared, slipping toward the exits in quiet resignation. But it wasn't until the music stopped that people truly began to realize something was wrong. Up on stage, the wedding band had been providing elegant background music, soft piano notes, a touch of violin, and the occasional smooth jazz tune. They had just finished a song when, instead of starting another, they put down their instruments. The pianist closed the lid on the grand piano. The violinist tucked her bow under her arm. The drummer adjusted his cufflinks and stood up. And without a word, they all walked off the stage. The sudden silence was deafening. People looked up from their conversations, blinking in confusion. The music had been an ever-present hum, a steady heartbeat to the celebration. Now, nothing. The entire room felt it. The weight of an invisible force pressing down. The sense that something was happening, something no one could quite put their finger on. At the front of the room, my mother-in-law, the self-appointed queen of etiquette and social standing, finally sensed the shift. She had been too busy basking in her own glory, soaking in the compliments, flaunting her jewelry and expensive gown. But now, the atmosphere had changed. She flagged down the wedding coordinator, a tall, thin woman in a fitted black suit and a headset. "Why is the music off?" my mother-in-law demanded. "And where is the champagne service? My guests are waiting." The coordinator, usually a pillar of professionalism, looked visibly shaken. I'll check on it," she stammered before hurrying toward the back. But there was nothing to check, because there was no staff left to check on. Up until this moment, my wife had been completely oblivious. She had been seated at a table with her sister and some of their old university friends, lost in gossip and meaningless conversation. She had barely acknowledged my presence since we arrived. But when the music stopped, when the servers vanished, when the room shifted from celebration to confusion, she finally noticed. She frowned, setting down her drink. "What's going on?" she murmured to her sister. Her sister glanced around, also noticing the eeriness. "I don't know, but I saw some of the staff leaving. I think something's happening." My wife turned in her seat, scanning the room. That's when her eyes met mine. I was already watching her. I lifted my glass slightly, my expression calm, controlled. And in that single moment, I saw it. Recognition. A flicker of realization in her eyes. She knew. She didn't know how. She didn't know why. But she knew. I was behind this. Her lips parted slightly, as if to say something, but no words came out. She looked around again, this time with urgency. Then, for the first time all night, she looked worried. Good. Because this was only the beginning. I checked my watch. 10 minutes had passed. The real storm was just about to begin. Not a comfortable silence, the kind that settles between two lovers at peace. No, this was the unnatural kind. The kind that makes people shift in their seats, adjust their ties, glance around for reassurance that everything is still under control. But it wasn't. And soon, everyone would know it. I remained seated at the back, arms folded, watching the slow realization creep through the wedding like a rising tide. The guests, at first, tried to ignore it. They were the kind of people who thrived on maintaining appearances, who wouldn't admit something was wrong until it slapped them across the face. Well, the slap was coming. At the far end of the hall, near the kitchen doors, 3 waiters exchanged glances. Then, as if on cue, they unfastened their aprons, tossed them onto the nearest table, and walked out. It was slow, calculated, like ghosts disappearing into the night. One of the groomsmen, a broad-shouldered man in an overpriced tuxedo, furrowed his brow. "Hey, where are you guys going?" No response. He turned to grab another waiter, only to find that one was already walking away, too. Then another. Then another. The once graceful, choreographed movement of the staff was falling apart like a house of cards. Across the room, at the bar, the head bartender lifted his hat, tipped it slightly toward my mother-in-law, and walked out without a word. Behind him, the 2 junior bartenders hesitated for only a moment before following. The line of guests waiting for drinks stared at the abandoned bottles and empty bar stools. Someone chuckled nervously. This must be a joke, right? But nobody laughed. Because the second wave was already beginning. The first real sign of panic came when my mother-in-law finally lost her composure. She had always been a woman of control, of power, of making sure everything ran exactly the way she wanted. But right now, her control was slipping through her fingers like sand. Her lips tightened into a thin line. She whipped around to find the wedding coordinator, her last line of defense. Fix this. Now. The wedding coordinator, who had built a career out of handling high-maintenance clients, stood frozen. She wasn't reaching for her headset. She wasn't moving to call an extra staff. She was just standing there. Because she already knew. There was nothing left to fix. "Ma'am," she said slowly, almost apologetically. "The staff, they're gone." Mother-in-law's eyes bulged. "Gone," she hissed. "Yes. All of them. All of them." I saw it happen in real time. The moment the realization struck her like a brick to the face. The wedding. The one she had spent over a year planning. The one she had used to flaunt her social status. The one where she had mocked me, belittled me, pushed me to the back like an uninvited guest. It was unraveling right in front of her, and she had no clue why. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. People were shifting in their seats, frowning, whispering in confusion. Why is the service stopping? Where are the waiters? This is weird. Who runs out of staff in the middle of a wedding? Guests who had been holding empty glasses for too long started looking irritated. The ones who had plates full of half-eaten food now realized there was no one coming to clear them. The ones who had been waiting for a fresh round of champagne were now holding nothing but thin air. A woman in an emerald green gown, her diamond necklace glinting under the dim lights, waved down a passing staff member. "Excuse me, could you tell me what's going on? We've been waiting for service." The staff member, a decorator who had been setting up floral arrangements minutes ago, simply smiled. Then, he took off his name tag, placed it neatly on the table, and walked away. The woman's jaw dropped. Guests were no longer whispering. They were talking loudly. Confusion was turning to frustration, and frustration was turning into full-blown panic. I had been watching my wife the entire time. I had watched the slow, creeping dread settle into her features. Her nails tapped anxiously against the table. She scanned the room, searching for someone. Anyone. To take control. Her mother? Furious and yelling at the coordinator. The venue manager? Nowhere to be found. The waiters? Gone. She turned again and locked eyes with me. This time, there was no mistaking it. She knew. She didn't know how I did it. She didn't know when I did it. But she knew it was me. I didn't say a word. I simply lifted my glass in a slow, deliberate motion, took a sip, and smiled. Her face drained of color. She leaned toward me, voice low but urgent. "What did you do?" I tilted my head slightly. "Me. Don't play games with me. This," she gestured around the collapsing event. "This is you, isn't it?" I let the silence stretch between us. Then, in the calmest voice possible, I said, "Oh, sweetheart. I'm just sitting in the back, like you all wanted." And with that, I set my glass down, leaned back, and watched as everything fell apart. The venue staff exit doors burst open. The last remaining employees, security guards, dishwashers, event organizers, filed out in a perfectly coordinated exodus. Guests stood up, bewildered. The once grand wedding, the symbol of my in-laws' wealth and status, was collapsing before their eyes. A cold chill settled over the room. People were pulling out their phones, making calls, whispering about what the hell was happening. But I already knew. Because this wasn't just a wedding disaster. This was a lesson. And my wife's family? They were about to learn exactly who I was. I checked my watch. Time for the truth. It started slowly, a ripple of confusion rolling through the grand ballroom, subtle at first. A few murmurs. Guests shifting in their seats, craning their necks, glancing around for an explanation. Then, like a glass shattering in slow motion, the event began to fall apart. The first real shock came when a group of guests near the buffet table lifted the lids of the silver serving trays, only to find them empty. Not half full, not poorly stocked, completely empty. One man, someone I recognized as a business associate of my father-in-law, slammed his lid shut, turning to a nearby waiter. "What is this?" he demanded, gesturing at the barren table. The waiter, an older man with neatly combed hair and a practiced smile, didn't answer. He simply reached into his pocket, pulled out a resignation slip, and placed it carefully on the table. Then he walked away. A woman in a red silk gown, standing nearby, let out a nervous laugh. "This has to be a joke, right?" she said. "Where's the food?" No answer. Because the kitchen staff was gone. The people in charge of preparing the main courses, serving the fancy hors d'oeuvres, and ensuring the champagne glasses never emptied, they had all walked out. And now, there was nothing left to serve. Over at the bar, things weren't any better. A line had formed, guests expecting their drinks, growing impatient. A young woman in a diamond-studded gown tapped her fingers against the counter. "Hello? Can I get some champagne here?" The bartender, the last one remaining, polished the rim of a glass, set it down carefully, and exhaled. Then, with an infuriatingly calm expression, he lifted his hands and said, "Sorry, folks, we're closed." Gasps. Stunned silence. Then, "What? Closed? Are you insane? This is a wedding." The bartender shrugged, tossing his towel onto the counter. "Not my problem anymore." And with that, he turned on his heel and left. The guests stood there, blinking, unsure if this was some elaborate prank. But it wasn't, because now, the truth was sinking in. The wedding was falling apart, and there was no one left to fix it. At first, they tried to downplay it. "It's just a miscommunication," someone said. "They probably just had a shift change," another guest offered, voice uneasy. But then, the lights dimmed. Not in a romantic, ambient way. No, the sound system crackled, the chandeliers flickered, and suddenly, all of the decorative spotlights that had been highlighting the bride and groom, they shut off. The band was already gone. The music wasn't coming back. Now, the entire event looked dull, lacking, lifeless. Without the perfect lighting, without the trained staff running the show behind the scenes, it was no longer an extravagant wedding. It was just a badly planned event falling apart. And that's when the first wave of exits began. Guests who had only come for status reasons, those who had no real connection to the bride or groom, took this as their cue to leave. I watched, completely still, as people started slipping toward the exits. Not running, not making a scene, just quietly walking out. As if they didn't want to be associated with a failing event. As if they didn't want to be seen at a wedding that was, in real time, becoming a disaster. By now, my mother-in-law was livid. Her carefully crafted mask of elegance was cracking. She stormed toward the wedding coordinator, who, by now, was shaking. "Where is the staff?" The coordinator stammered, struggling to form an answer. I don't know, ma'am. They left. Every single one of them." Mother-in-law's eyes widened. "Then call someone. Get them back." The coordinator swallowed hard, gripping her clipboard so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "We can't." "What do you mean you can't?" The woman exhaled shakily, avoiding her gaze. "Because, ma'am, they don't work for us." My mother-in-law froze. She was watching. I could feel it. My wife, who had spent the last hour ignoring me, dismissing me, pretending I didn't exist, was now staring at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Her lips parted, her breath shallow. Because now, she was putting the pieces together. The perfectly timed staff walkout, the disappearance of the music, the drinks, the food, the coordinated destruction of her family's most important event. It wasn't bad luck. It wasn't a simple mistake. It was me. Her hands trembled slightly as she leaned toward me. You did this." I didn't blink, didn't move. I just let the weight of her words settle into the air between us. Then, finally, I spoke. "What makes you think that?" Her jaw tightened. Asterisk, "because I know you. And this," she gestured around wildly, "this is too perfect. It's planned. It's you." I tilted my head, pretending to consider. "Maybe." Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. "Why?" she whispered. I leaned in, voice calm, steady. "Because you let them disrespect me. Over and over again. Because they called me the poor one. And you laughed. Because you made me an outsider at my own family's event. Her breath hitched. But this is ruining my brother's wedding. No, sweetheart. I smiled, slow and deliberate. I'm ruining your mother's wedding. Her eyes widened. And right on cue, the venue manager walked in. Her face was grim, her hands clasped together as she approached my mother-in-law. Ma'am, I regret to inform you that, due to a breach of contract, this event is now being shut down. Gasps. Whispers. Mother-in-law staggered back, stunned into silence. The wedding was over. And I just watched it burn. The laughter, the chatter, the clinking of glasses, all of it was gone. In its place, stunned faces, pale expressions, panic bubbling beneath the surface. And at the center of it all, standing rigid with her perfectly manicured hands shaking at her sides, was my mother-in-law. I had never seen her like this before. Not during the years she had mocked me at family gatherings. Not when she called me the poor one behind my back. Not even when she practically spat at my existence at this very wedding. No, this was different. Because for the first time in her entire life, she was powerless. The venue manager stood firm, her voice even and professional despite the chaos unraveling around her. Ma'am, I regret to inform you that due to a breach of contract, this event is now being shut down. The words sliced through the air like a blade. Gasps. Murmurs. Guests turned to each other, whispering, gripping their phones, texting frantically. Shut down? How? My mother-in-law blinked. Once. Twice. Then, slowly, her face twisted in fury. What? She shrieked, her voice shrill enough to make heads snap toward her. What are you talking about? The manager stood her ground. Your contract explicitly states that any mistreatment of event staff, verbal, physical, or otherwise, results in an immediate cancellation of service. The multiple complaints filed today by our workers have left us with no choice. I watched as the words sank in. My mother-in-law, the woman who had spent years stepping on people like they were beneath her, was now at the mercy of the very workers she disrespected. Irony was a beautiful thing. This is unbelievable, someone muttered. We came all this way for a wedding, and now there's nothing? This is humiliating. The whispers grew louder, harsher, more unforgiving. Because it wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about reputation. These weren't just any guests. These were socialites, businessmen, women who thrived on status, and now, they were standing in the middle of a collapsing event, trapped in the fallout. No food, no drinks, no music, just a mess of abandoned tables, spilled champagne, and the looming shame of being present at a wedding that had just imploded. People were already leaving. Not in an orderly, polite way. No, they were slipping out, one by one. Some in pairs, some in groups, each trying to avoid the embarrassment of being part of this disaster. And that's when my mother-in-law's panic turned into something else. Desperation. She spun toward my wife, her voice sharp. Do something. My wife, who had been staring blankly into space, flinched. Mom, call someone. Fix this. I don't know what to do. That was the wrong answer. Mother-in-law turned toward my father-in-law, her last hope. Fix it. But the man just shook his head in quiet defeat. That's when she knew. It was over. The wedding was over. I had been watching her closely, watching as her face morphed from confusion to dread, watching as she pieced together everything. She finally turned to me, her hands trembling. You did this. It wasn't a question. It was a fact. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried through the emptying hall like thunder. I let a slow smile creep across my face. I told you. Her throat bobbed. Told me what? I leaned in, voice steady. That disrespect has consequences. She sucked in a sharp breath. But this, she gestured at the ruined event, the fleeing guests, her devastated family. This is fair, I finished for her. Her eyes widened. You humiliated me, repeatedly. You let your family treat me like garbage. And tonight? I exhaled, shaking my head. Tonight, you laughed while they insulted me. She was breathing hard now. I didn't mean what? I interrupted, tilting my head. Didn't mean for me to hear it? Didn't mean for me to finally do something about it? Tears welled up in her eyes. But I didn't care, because I had spent years swallowing my pride, watching them mock me, treating me like an accessory instead of a man. Tonight, they learned who I really was. I stood up, slowly, casually. Then, in a clear, steady voice, I said, "For those of you who don't know, allow me to introduce myself properly." Some guests froze mid-step, turning to look. Mother-in-law's face twisted. My wife stared, unmoving. "I'm not the poor one, as you so fondly call me. I am the sole owner of the event staffing company that provided everything for this wedding: catering, bartenders, decorators, planners. Every single person who just walked out." I smiled, stretching my arms out. "They work for me." Gasps rippled through the remaining guests. My mother-in-law actually staggered. My wife? Silent. I took a step forward. "You see, while you all spent years laughing at me, underestimating me, assuming I was beneath you, I was building something." I turned to face the bride and groom. "And tonight?" I chuckled, shaking my head. "Well, you just had the privilege of witnessing exactly what I'm capable of." The bride let out a strangled sob. The groom? A mixture of rage and horror. Mother-in-law? Completely frozen. I adjusted my cufflinks, glanced at my watch, and sighed dramatically. "I think I've seen enough." Then, turning to my wife, I said the final words that would haunt her forever. "Enjoy the rest of your night, darling." "Oh, wait." I smirked. "There's nothing left to enjoy." And with that, I turned and walked out. I didn't rush. I didn't need to. The moment I turned my back, I could feel the weight of their stares, the tension pressing down like a storm ready to break. The sound of my footsteps against the marble floor echoed through the hall, a stark contrast to the growing panic behind me. Then it happened. Like a dam finally bursting, the silence broke into a wave of chaos. "What do you mean he owns the staff?" My mother-in-law's voice pierced the air, sharp and panicked. It was as if she had just woken up from a dream, except this wasn't a dream. It was a nightmare. Her nightmare. I didn't stop walking, but I slowed my pace, just enough to hear everything unravel behind me. "He can't just do this." "Get them back," she screeched, her heels clicking against the floor as she spun in circles, looking for someone. Anyone. To fix this. There was no one left. What the F just happened? The groom's voice boomed through the hall, his patience finally cracking. His wedding was ruined. No food, no drinks, no music, no staff, and worst of all, no prestige. The image of his perfect high society wedding was in flames, burning to ashes right in front of him, and he knew exactly who was responsible. You. I didn't even flinch. I could hear his footsteps thundering toward me, could feel the rage radiating from him like heat off a wildfire. But I didn't turn around. Not yet. Because I wanted him to come to me. I wanted him to reach the point of no return. And he did. Faster than I expected. A hand clamped down on my shoulder, yanking me back violently. I turned, slowly, deliberately. "You think this is funny, huh?" he snarled. His face inches from mine, red with fury. "You think you can just waltz in here and up my wedding?" I didn't speak. I didn't react. I just let him lose control. "You ruined everything," he yelled, his hand still gripping my shoulder, his fingers trembling. I glanced down at his grip, then back up at him. "Take your hand off me." His jaw clenched. He didn't move. He thought he could intimidate me. He thought I was the same quiet, overlooked man they had mocked for years. But he was wrong. I smiled. And then, in a voice just loud enough for him to hear, I said, "This was never your wedding." His nostrils flared. "What the F** does that mean?" I took a step forward, forcing him to take one back. "This wedding," I continued, my voice even, unshaken, deadly calm, "was your mother's showpiece, your family's vanity project, a chance to flaunt their wealth, their connections, their status. But you were just the prop." The veins in his forehead bulged. He raised his fist. That was his final mistake. Because the moment he did, security appeared. Not the venue's security. Mine. 2 men in black suits materialized from the edges of the room, gripping his arms before he could even swing. "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" someone shouted. The groom struggled, but it was useless. He wasn't the only one who had power in this room, and I had just proven it. I leaned in, lowering my voice. "You want to hit me? Go ahead. Let's see how well a broken nose looks in your wedding photos." "Oh wait." I smirked. "There won't be any photos, will there?" His body tensed. Then, as if someone had ripped the air out of his lungs, he slumped. Defeated. Broken. The security let him go, and he stumbled back. And I? I turned back toward the door, adjusting my cufflinks like nothing had happened. Wait. This voice was different. Not my mother-in-law's fury. Not the groom's rage. Desperation. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. Not yet. "Please." My wife's voice trembled. "Please don't walk away." Slowly, I turned my head just enough to meet her eyes. She looked wrecked. Her makeup, once perfect, was smudged at the corners, her lipstick fading. Her hands clutched the fabric of her dress like she was trying to hold herself together. "We can fix this," she whispered. Just tell me how." For the first time all night, I felt something close to pity. Not for her family, not for the wedding, but for her. Because she was the only one in this entire mess who actually thought I could be reasoned with. "There's nothing to fix," I said. She took a shaky step forward. "I didn't know they were going to say those things to you. I didn't think." I cut her off. "No, you didn't think." She flinched. "You didn't think when you let them treat me like garbage. You didn't think when you laughed along. You didn't think when you let them push me to the back like I didn't belong." Her breathing was uneven now. I didn't want to cause a scene. I let out a low, humorless chuckle. "Well, sweetheart, congratulations." I gestured around the wreckage of the wedding. "You got your scene." Tears spilled down her cheeks. I took a deep breath, exhaling as I gave her one last, long look. "You chose them over me." Her face crumpled. "And now?" I shrugged. "You get to live with that choice." She reached for me, but I had nothing left to give. I turned my back, and this time, I didn't stop. I walked out of the wedding, out of her family's life, out of that chapter of my existence forever. And as I stepped into the cool night air, I finally smiled, because for the first time in years, I was free. I didn't turn back. Not once. Not when I heard my wife choke back a sob. Not when her heels clicked frantically against the marble floor as she ran after me. Not even when her voice, trembling, raw, desperate, called my name. I kept walking, because she had already made her choice. And now, she had to live with it. Wait. I heard her stumble behind me, her breath ragged, uneven. "Please, just stop for a second." I reached the entrance of the venue. The grand double doors stood open, revealing the dark, empty parking lot outside. The air was crisp, cool, and for the first time in a long, long time, I felt light. I stepped forward. Then, she grabbed my arm. I stopped, not because I wanted to, but because this was the last time I would ever let her touch me. Slowly, I turned. She was a mess. Her once flawless makeup smeared across her cheeks, her lips trembling, raw from biting down on them, her eyes, wide, frantic, overflowing with something she should have felt long before this moment. Regret. "You can't just leave like this," she whispered. I lifted a brow. "Can't I?" Her grip on my arm tightened. "We can fix this." I let out a slow, deep breath. Then, I met her eyes, cold, unreadable. "We." She nodded too quickly, as if the speed of it could somehow convince me. "Yes. I should have stopped them. I should have defended you. I know that now, but we can move past this. I can talk to my mom, to my brother, to everyone. I cut her off with a single step closer. "You still don't get it, do you?" She froze. "This isn't about them." Her brows knitted together. "What?" "This isn't about your mother, or your brother, or your family." I tilted my head. "This is about you." Her lips parted, but no words came out. You let this happen, I said, voice eerily calm. You let them treat me like garbage for years. You let them humiliate me tonight. You let them mock me, push me aside, make me feel like an outsider at my own family event. She shook her head wildly. I didn't mean, stop. She did. You keep saying you didn't mean for it to happen, I said, my voice dipping lower. But you never stopped it. You never stood up for me. And when they laughed at me tonight, you laughed with them. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I was stupid, she whispered. I was caught up in everything. I let them get in my head. But it doesn't mean I don't love you. I smiled. Not because I believed her. Because I didn't. Love? I repeated, letting the word linger between us. She nodded frantically. Yes. I love you. You know that. My smile faded. No, you don't. Her entire body stilled. You love what I did for you. Her breath hitched. You love the comfort I provided. The security. The convenience. I leaned in just slightly, my voice like ice. But you never loved me. Her hands flew to my chest, gripping my suit. That's not true. Then why was it so easy for you to watch me be disrespected? She flinched. Why did you sit there while your mother treated me like I was nothing? Her fingers curled into the fabric of my jacket, shaking. Why did you only care when you realized I had the power to take everything away? Her lips quivered. And in that moment, she knew. She knew I was right. Because love? Love is respect. Love is loyalty. Love is standing by someone even when it's inconvenient. She had never done any of those things. Not once. And now, she was watching me slip through her fingers. Forever. Please. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I'll do anything. Just don't walk away from me. I studied her. The desperation in her eyes. The silent plea that screamed, I don't want to lose you. But she already had. She just hadn't accepted it yet. You know, I murmured, genuine amusement slipping into my tone. It's funny. She sniffled, blinking at me. What? Your mother told me to sit in the back because she didn't want me in the wedding photos. Her face contorted with shame. I know. That was awful. But we can, now? I chuckled softly. There won't be any wedding photos. The breath left her lungs in a shaky exhale. Don't do this, she whispered. Don't just leave me. I stepped back. Her hands fell away from my suit, hanging limply at her sides. I already did. She let out a broken sob. And I turned my back, for the last time. I stepped outside. The cool air hit my face, washing away the stench of desperation and fake wealth that had clung to that ballroom. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply, and then I smiled. Because for the first time in years, I was free. Free from her family. Free from the mockery. Free from a woman who never truly saw me. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a specific number. Then, I dialed. The voice on the other end answered instantly. Is it done? I glanced back one last time. The ballroom doors were still open, giving me a perfect view of the wreckage. The scattered guests. The abandoned tables. The groom slumped in a chair, head in his hands. And my wife? Standing alone, crying. I exhaled. Yeah, I said, turning away for good. It's done. Click. I walked to my car, never looking back. The engine of my car purred softly as I pulled out of the venue's parking lot, the glow of the grand ballroom fading into the rearview mirror. I didn't speed. I didn't rush. I drove slowly, deliberately, savoring every second of my departure, because I knew that behind me, inside that crumbling wedding hall, the world of my wife and her family was imploding, and they had no one to blame but themselves. My phone buzzed. I didn't check it immediately. I knew exactly who it was. By the time I reached the main road, the notifications were coming relentlessly. I glanced at my screen. 37 missed calls. 15 new messages. Wife, baby, please pick up. Wife, I'm sorry, just come back so we can talk. Wife, please, don't leave like this. I love you. Mother-in-law, how dare you? You've ruined everything. Brother-in-law, the groom, you're a sick F*****. You just destroyed my wedding. Hope it was worth it. Asterisk father-in-law. Call me. Let's talk like men. I smirked. Men. Funny how they only wanted to talk like men when the power had shifted out of their hands. I tossed my phone onto the passenger seat and kept driving. Tonight wasn't about them anymore. Tonight was about me. I checked into a 5-star hotel, a penthouse suite, top floor, city skyline view. I didn't do it because I needed to prove a point. I did it because I deserved it. For years, I had been disrespected, mocked, treated like an outsider. Tonight, I had flipped the script. The hotel staff greeted me with professional smiles, offering me a complimentary bottle of their finest whiskey. Would you like your bags brought up, sir? I smiled. No bags. Just me tonight. I took the elevator to my suite, stepping into the expansive room bathed in golden city lights. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window, and looked out at the world below. And then, for the first time in years, I felt peace. No weight pressing down on my shoulders. No in-laws suffocating me with their judgment. No wife quietly laughing while I was humiliated. Just me. Free. Unburdened. Whole. I raised my glass. To self-respect. I took a slow sip, letting the burn of the whiskey settle deep. And that's when my phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't my wife. It was my lawyer. I answered on the second ring. Everything ready? I asked. His voice was crisp, professional. The papers are finalized. Divorce is straightforward. No joint assets. You're walking away clean. I exhaled. A weight I hadn't realized I was carrying finally lifting. Send them over. Already in your email. All you have to do is sign. I nodded, swirling the last of my whiskey in my glass. And the house? Legally, she can stay for now. But it's in your name. You can sell it whenever you want. I smirked. Good. Put it on the market. High price. No negotiations. There was a pause. You sure? She's still living there? Not my problem. He let out a short chuckle. Understood. I'll handle it. Click. And just like that, it was done. It was past midnight when my phone rang again. I let it ring. I let it go to voicemail. And then, I played the message. Her voice came through, shaky, broken. I don't know what to say. I don't even know where to start. A deep inhale. I messed up. I know that now. I let them treat you like you weren't enough. I let myself believe it too. But I see it now. I see what I did. I see what I lost. I sipped my whiskey, listening, but feeling nothing. Please, if there's even a small part of you that still loves me, just call me back. Just give me a chance to make this right. Silence. Then, her final words. I don't know how to live without you. The message ended. I set my glass down. Then, I deleted the voicemail. Because she was no longer my problem. By morning, my lawyer had already filed the divorce papers. By noon, my house was officially on the market. And by sunset, I was gone. I withdrew from every shared bank account, leaving nothing behind. I cut off every mutual friend. I blocked every number. I erased myself from her world. Because she had made it abundantly clear, she had never truly valued me. So now, she would learn what it meant to live without me. 1 year. That's how long it took for my name to disappear from her circles. No one spoke about me anymore, except in hushed whispers. Whatever happened to him? He just vanished. I heard he sold his house and moved overseas. I heard he built an empire somewhere else. The rumors never stopped. But she knew the truth. She knew exactly what happened. Because one day, exactly 1 year after that disastrous wedding, she saw me again, at a high-end restaurant, sitting at a private table, with a beautiful woman across from me, laughing. I didn't see my ex-wife at first, but she saw me. And for a moment, just a moment, our eyes met. Her face fell, because in that moment, she saw what she had thrown away. Not a poor man, not an unworthy husband, but a man who had rebuilt his life. Without her, I lifted my glass in a silent toast. Then, I looked away, because she was nothing more than a memory now. And me? I was finally living.